Welcome to Deges and Dragons.
I thought this was going to be hard, but...
Welcome to Deges and Dragons.
Who wants some of the Ripper?
They're state champs, baby. Woo!
He's completely Captain Crunch. I'm a man of the people.
Shattered world.
Ripper knows. Ripper always knows.
And welcome to another episode of the Degecast, the supplemental podcast for our YouTube show, Deges and Dragons. Hey, I'm your host, Nate Lindberg, and you can find me on Twitter at Nate Lindberg. And you can follow our brand on Twitter, Facebook, and most importantly, YouTube at Degetime. Now, if you'd like to be a part of this show, you know what? We'd like to have you. Send those emails to us at degetime@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at the Degetime voicemail line. That is 617-506-9686. We will read those emails and we'll listen to those voicemails right here live next week. Now, you know, I'm not going to lie. I've had some fun making entrances for these guys over the past few weeks, so this week ain't going to be any different. Let's get this show underway. The following podcast is scheduled for one fall.
Oh, you touch my tra-la-la. My ding-ding-dong.
First, he is our resident psychology and therapy expert, the Degetime co-creator, and our resident game master. Hailing from the town next to West Newbury, Massachusetts, Conrad Auden. Let's go, Puny.
Oh my god, it's like, am I supposed to talk now? I don't know how to go something else. Oh my god, I had to mute myself.
Yeah, I had to mute myself too. That was incredible.
I'm sitting there today going, all right. I got to figure out what do we got? What do we got from more Conrad theme music here? And I'm like, oh, you touch my tra-la-la.
I love the general theme of the music selected for me. Like the Livin' La Vida Loca into Maria Like Aloud into Gunther. Oh yeah, yes. That was great. That touched my tra-la-la, and I had to mute myself because I was laughing so hard.
Excellent, man. I'm glad to hear it. Now, we got more people we got to introduce. And his opponent. Making his way to the ring, he is our veteran RPG gamer and permanent member of the Deges and Dragons player panel. From parts unknown, Tony Cameron Steele Shermooksness. Hard as steel.
Fantastic.
Yes, man. I Heart of a Dragon. So what's going on tonight, Tony?
Not much. You, man?
Not a whole heck of a lot. I just sucked down an iced coffee. The caffeine is currently kicking in, and I have tomorrow off. My company gave us what they're calling a summer recharge day, so I'm looking forward to doing absolutely butt kiss tomorrow.
Sweet.
Yes, indeed. But we're not here to talk about what I'm going to not do tomorrow. We're here to talk about wrestling, RPGs, and therapy, and more stuff. And here with us tonight to do that is one more person. And now, our special guest referee for tonight's podcast. Is a lifelong wrestling fan, my co-host from the Pro Wrestling Torch podcast, PWT Talks NXT, and he's also an independent game designer himself. Hailing from my worst nightmare, Kelly Wells.
tell you, man, a lot of the stuff I was going to say just left my head as soon as I heard Hiroki Goto's music playing me on. Oh, man. What a lifelong dream to enter to the music of Hiroki Goto. I got to tell you, Nate, your opening here was so polished and so clean. I found it hard to reconcile that with the version I get of you on the Torch. My name is Kelly Wells. I'm the host of the Pro Wrestling Torch podcast, PWT Talks NXT. It's a podcast about NXT, and also the host of their podcast NXT 8 Years Back, which is what it sounds like. And yes, I am a board game designer as well. So yeah, we had some long introductions, so that's our show. Thanks everybody for listening.
Yes, we'll talk to you next week. No,
indeed.
No, appreciate you coming on tonight, dude. I stumble enough talking, well, both live on this podcast and on Wednesday nights on ours. So I figured, I'll polish up the intro and people might think I know what I'm actually doing.
Took him only 87 takes, folks.
Exactly. Yeah, it didn't take me 4 hours to put that. No, it really didn't. But whatever. So, all right, before we get into talking about Worldwide Wrestling RPG and all the stuff that Kelly's here to talk about, one thing I want to talk about real quick is something that we're actually getting involved with. Now, if you guys remember, this was probably, I think 14 episodes back or so. We talked with a gentleman by the name of Jack Birkenstock from the Bodana Group, which is a charity organization that promotes mental health and RPG gaming. And we have one of the big topics that we were talking about is their big convention that is Save Against Fear. Now, obviously, with the current environment, Save Against Fear has to be virtual this year. We're actually going to have a pretty big involvement with Save Against Fear this year. We're going to be running a few games for them. We're actually going to be doing a live Deeges and Dragons episode, guys. We're going to be doing a live Deeges and Dragons episode, so you guys can actually. We're going to be playing Clank. Conrad, actually, tell them a little bit about the setting that we're going to be playing in, because this is something that Conrad kind of sort of put together.
Yeah, it'll be a traditional Western setting, the spaghetti Western, if you will, where the typical setting for mysterious drifters rolling into town, kind of the influence of the Clink game itself. And the players will be taking on the roles of drifters in this Western America a couple hundred years ago. I don't know how much more to spoil beyond that.
Nope, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. So we're gonna be playing a game. If you guys have watched our Clink gameplay, it's a very easy game to pick up and play. If you can flip a coin, you can play this RPG. So it's should be a pretty easy game for us to jump into. Character creation's pretty simple. Tony is going to run two games that are going to kind of be non-therapeutic related. They're just going to be for fun. Get the Deeges and Dragons brand out there a little bit, and then we're going to do a kind of a big game. I'm setting it up as a Zoom webinar, which is one of the worst words in the English language. However, we're setting it up as a Zoom webinar, so we're going to be able to have an audience, which is really cool. And on top of that, we're going to I'm going to be kind of live producing it. So we're going to have music, we're going to have sound effects, we're going to have graphics. It's going to actually be should be a good time. I'm looking forward to it. Jack Birkenstock is helping us out with some of our players. I think he's going to try and nudge some clinicians that are either into RPG gaming as a form of therapeutic gaming, or are looking to become the therapeutic game master or something like that. This should be cool. We should have, I think we're going to go for about 6 players, and it should be a good time. So
and at the end of it too, we're going to, so as it's a webinar, people will be able to view it, and there will be the chat box option. So as it goes along, you can type in comments or questions, because at the end we are going to have a discussion as well about, what did you see clinically or therapeutically when talking in relation to the players themselves, and then anyone who has those questions in the audience, we'll talk with them.
Yeah, exactly. So this, Save Against Fear is going to be in, oh God, now I got to look it up. It's October 8th. October 8th through October 11th. We're not sure what days we're playing or anything yet, but stay tuned. We'll let you know via social media or whatever. However, we are going to be recording that live game, and it will be up on the YouTube channel at some point shortly after Save Against Fear, so you guys could check it out if you're not able to join the live broadcast. So I'm really looking forward to that, and it should be a good time. It should really be a good time. So with all of that said, now let's get into what we're actually here to talk about tonight. I guess we're here to talk about Save Against Fear too, but hey, whatever. So Kelly has way back in the day, from what he has told me anyway, he came up with a dice wrestling game that he was able to play with his buddies because, well, I'm guessing nothing else existed at that particular time for dice wrestling or any sort of RPG wrestling or anything like that. So I would, Kelly, I'd love to hear a little bit about this game, how it works, and some of the characters that you might have come up with, things like that. I hand the platform, the golden microphone, over to you.
Options were slim when I was young. I'm older than you. All there was like Mancala and chess, and we'd use our abacuses and things like that. Yes, I can get into some of the mental health stuff. I'm sure we will. We'll probably stumble upon that. Dice wrestling. It's a thing. So my brother, he's 2 years younger than I am, but he got into pro wrestling before I did. And he got me into it by showing me, we rented Royal Rumble 1989. And to this day, the Royal Rumble is my favorite wrestling match.
Hell yeah.
Yes, it's what I look forward to the most. And it, sometimes it delivers, sometimes it doesn't, but it's always what I look forward to most. And the bad ones are still good. So I decided, I was already kind of experimenting with like game books. I don't know if you guys know Grail Quest. It's a choose your own adventure, but it had fights along the way, and you had inventories that you would fill in and things like that. Nothing groundbreaking, but in 5th grade, I won a Grail Quest book on the last day of school, and ended up just absolutely falling in love with this battle system. And then, of course, the humor of the guy who wrote it, which really was the star of the show. So I decided to I didn't use his version of combat, but I created my own combat tables, and I started out by making it probably too involved, and then created it to a level that I could actually memorize it and then do these matches fairly quickly. And I liked to draw a lot when I was young, so I've drawn, I don't know, I would guess about 2,000 wrestlers, because I would go through roster changes and things like that. And I'd have, I would run this company as an ongoing company with regular weekly shows and things like that. Now I couldn't wait for 1 week to actually do the shows. So I would just do show after show after show, and then just future date them, to the point where at one point I was like 11 years ahead of the actual calendar, just because I love doing it so much. And now I'm actually behind the calendar, because, at least on the original company, which I called World Wrestling Guys. It was real basic. I would have named it something else if I wasn't 12 at the time and just wanted a name for it, but that's what I did.
So wait, you still actually have that like as an active game, if you will?
It's technically still active. WWG is, but along the way, I made 3 or 4 different other companies. And when I was in college, I made one for. I went to Minnesota State Mankato, which is a pretty big acting college, and there are actors that you would know that are from MSU. And I've been mildly successful as an actor. A lot of industrials. So if you go to work at a place and you take e-learnings, you might see me on the videos, which pays so much more than it should. It's so sad that I've made so much more doing that than actual real acting that, satisfies the soul. But yeah, I went to MSU and I created a wrestling federation that was actually all of us actors, and we would all go to Perkins and study for tests, and then between study sessions, I would roll matches for the monthly pay-per-views, and I would lead up to those with actual weekly shows, and I really got people into it. I probably had 40 people going to this side room in Perkins with me every month to see what happened on my pay-per-views, and then we would hang out in the green room every week, and I would do my regular weekly show, which I called The Wedge. But now I still have 2 different companies, and I do run them, and I did dice wrestling like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I still do it every now and then, and a real easy thing to do on my own. And at the time, and as somebody who fought depression like lifelong, it was a real source of like a self-source of therapy that could be done at any time, and lose myself in that world for a while.
So you're able to actually play the game solo. It's not a game that you have to actually have friends or anything. Well, obviously you've got friends, but you know what I mean. You have to have friends physically around you, or on a in today's day and age, I guess on a Zoom call like us. But it's a game you can actually play on your own.
Not only do you not need to, it's easier if you don't.
Cool.
Like I would do the shows and then write the storylines in between. And that was the fun part, was having a lot of people around so I could do the match, do the write-up after the match, and then tell everybody what happened. And I'm a lifelong, I dabble in the tomfooleric arts. So it's a lot of silliness that I do. For instance, we found out one of the guys in my acting department was actually God. So that became a storyline because he was like God, the creator of the universe. And things like that were absolutely preposterous. So although if anybody was God, it would be this guy. He was a great guy. So it was something that I would do on my own. Although I did teach my best friends, Josh and Greg, both, and Greg is God. Josh and Greg, I taught them both how to do the wrestling show, and then they would write it, and they would have their own flavor. So I kind of had this thing where if it's Raw and then like main event, I would do the Raw type show, and one of them would do the main event type show, and they would use some of the B type characters and kind of groom them to go up to bigger things.
Just because we're not normally a wrestling podcast, I'm gonna translate for any non-wrestling fans. Sure. When he said the Raw show and the main event show, the Raw being WWE Monday Night Raw, which is their kind of flagship show. Main event, even though it sounds like it's an important show, is a show that is completely missable, completely skippable, and it only really features undercard guys that really don't matter. So he's talking about taking those guys, actually kind of like we talked last week with Kevin Catani, and the different tiers, like you get the undercard, the mid card, your main event level guys, and then even kind of the superstar level tier that the Undertaker, Brock Lesnar, kind of those guys surface at from time to time. But yeah, so he's kind of talking about taking guys from the undercard and building them up to be main event level stars. Somebody like Poindexter Puny, Conrad's character from our Worldwide Wrestling RPG, taking somebody like him and making him a world champion potentially.
Sure. I noticed the folly in what I was saying in that WWE decided to name their least important show Main Event.
Right.
It wasn't necessarily going to be their least important. When they started their first 6 or 8 episodes, it was like must-see stuff. And,
yeah, it was good.
And that was it. And I probably haven't seen much of it since. But yeah, that's what we would do. We would I would do this major show on Mondays, and then Josh would do this secondary show on Thursdays. And then later on, Greg and I did one, and that's actually kind of how Greg and I continued to have regular chats after he moved to the Chicago area. I'm in Minneapolis, by the way. And after he moved, he and I would do the two major brands. I actually did a brand split in my major company before WWE ever did. Like, I did it first, and I was like, they stole my idea. There's so many times they did storylines that I had already done. I couldn't believe it. But yeah, Greg and I, we split the roster, and we had a draft and everything. And then we would call each other every week and tell each other the entire story of what we had done.
That's cool. That's actually really cool. It's like, you know, like some of the games that we've played over the years, you know, as I've talked about quite a few times on the show, I wasn't a major RPG guy, major, you know, analog gamer, as I like to call it. But you know, there are some games there's one game, and I think I've talked about it a few times, was I believe it was a D&D game. I played a dwarf by the name of Torin Sunbar, and the story that Conrad put together for that game, it was just fantastic. And then we took that, and then we brought that story 200, I think it was like 200 years into the future. And I was able to play my great grandson, or how, I forget how many greats it was. If it was even great, it might've just been grandson. I don't remember, but no, you start, you take those stories and you build on them. And that was always something really fun and cool to look forward to. One thing that Conrad mentioned last week is wrestling it's like it is a soap opera, really. But it always has this continuity to it. Things that happened 20 years ago still matter, or still part of history, or part of the story, part of the narrative. So it's really cool that, like, you've got this wrestling company that goes back, Jesus, I don't know if you want me to tell your age or not, like anything like that, but goes back till the dawn of time.
I'm 42. Yeah, I've been doing it for 30 years on and off, and I've got title histories written out and everything. I have them written out, but I've largely got a lot of them memorized, as well as I've got the WWE championships memorized. In some cases, probably even better. But yeah, I mean, these characters, some of them are as real to me as anyone in my life. More so, give us a couple.
Sorry, go ahead.
I said more so in some cases, because you lose track of people, but the people you create they're always kind of there on the edges of the periphery of your mind.
Yeah, that's a damn good point. But no, like, actually tell us a little bit about, like, a couple of your favorite characters anyway, because I know one thing that I guess some people might be able to take away from this conversation would be character building, whether it be for the Worldwide Wrestling RPG, hell, it could even be for like a WWE game, a video game, or maybe you're going to create your own dice game, or there's a few other wrestling related games out there, some card games that are coming out, a couple on Kickstarter right now. Of course, I can't think of the name of the one Kevin Catani sent me the other day, but yeah, like, what are a couple of your favorite characters you've come up with?
My favorite group of characters that I probably have regularly in WWG, if I ever really pick that up again, is the El Wrestling family. They decided to kind of Americanize their name when they came up from Mexico, and they called themselves the El Wrestlings. And there's 7 of them, and they're normally named after things like fire, like ash, and Ceniza. I think that means ash. And then one of them means ember. That's La Asqua. I think he means ember. But then my favorite one is El Olvidarse, because he was the middle child and he was forgotten by the father. And as a result, he was kind of the only baby face because he wanted to go his own way. And he rejected the evil teachings of his father, more or less. And El Olvidarse does mean the forgotten. And so I have an ongoing, very soap opera storyline with that family, and Olvi Darce is right now at the time of my storyline. I don't remember what it is in the company. I think it's like 2006. He's my top star, and so that is kind of it's more or less built in reality. That, I mean, the idiotic reality of pro wrestling and lucha libre specifically. In Mexico, it's a big deal if your character loses their mask. So there's this other character who's not Mexican who posed as one of the family a couple of times to try to like steal their mask. These are, oh man, this is making me want to get back on it and finish this storyline with Olvi Darce.
This like kind of reminds me of like a Hispanic or Spanish like Von Erich family or something.
And it kind of is. Trix McMillan is he's this Irish American guy. He's a total bastard. He's a dick, and he doesn't care about any of their traditions. And he's the one that's kind of appropriated the culture, the tradition of them to try to infiltrate the group and take Olvi Darce's title, because Trix is the former champion and was the best champion, and now wants to get back there. And so it may, I picked a storyline, and I didn't know I was going to do this, that was real serious. Most of the stuff I do is very, very silly, but I got so into that. I got, I mean, the company I do now, which is called FFU, which stands for Fighting Friends United. That one is far sillier. I base it on the kind of the backdrop of New Japan Pro Wrestling, where everybody's in a faction and everybody has people who have their back. Some of the stuff, because you told me this is a PG show, I can't even talk about. But for instance, I've got a group called Beer League, and they're a bowling team, and they happen to have last names that are beer styles. It's just it's a coincidence. It's a coincidence in the way that Dr. Octopus is named Otto Octavius. Like where Marvel did that, and it's like, oh, what are the odds? But yeah, the Beer League, for instance, they got 4 people. It's Taekwon Porter, Millicent Stout, Johnny Lager, and Paul Double India Pale Ale. So
that's fantastic.
Names of them. You can guess which one is the fall guy for their group. And then I do actually have a Dungeons and Dragons type team. They're called the Deck of Many Things, and their leader is Flame Goblin, and they've got like this Viking dwarf named Von Hammerskuld, and Marcus Supreme. Marcus Supreme isn't actually a D&D character. He's just hoping they don't notice. He's just a nerd who plays D&D, and he really wants to be in the group, and so he's there. And then there's Gordon the Apothecary, and he's kind of a fall guy too. The reason I brought up those 2 groups specifically is that Flame Goblin kind of got into a feud with Taekwon Porter, and Flame Goblin he's got a lot of magical properties to him. I don't remember a lot of what I used to know about D&D, so I just kind of shoot from the hip. But Flame Goblin he can perform a lot of magic, and he took a loss to Porter to Taekwon Porter that he didn't like. It was upsetting. It was in the championship tournament or whatever, and so he put a curse on Taekwon Porter to make him endlessly grow hair. So Taekwon Porter comes out hairier and hairier for every match, and he's got to like shave mid-match and things like that. So it becomes this huge feud between Taekwon Porter and Flame Goblin, and it was all so I could lead up to a pay-per-view called Harry Porter and the Goblin of Fire. I worked backwards. I created these guys at the beginning all so I could get to that pay-per-view match. So that's the kind of idiocy. And then I've got a guy called Steve the Bear Tamer, but it's all in quotations. He's part of a group called Roar of the Grease Paint they're circus folk, but they're crappy circus folk. Like their leader is the bearded man, and then they've got
The bearded man.
and then they have Vladislav Little, the tallest midget in the world, super mime who thinks he's really cool because he's a mime, but he also has the power to talk. And then they have Steve the bear tamer, but it's all in quotes because Steve the bear tamer is a bear who ate Steve the bear tamer and hopes nobody will notice.
Dude,
So-
this is great.
That is my company now. So I've gone kind of off the deep end, I suppose. But
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
right,
That's
off the
fantastic.
deep end is where I want to be. So.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, I don't think that you've seen any of our gameplay, which is totally fine. But we've got a few characters, like Conrad's character. Conrad, please tell us a little bit about Poindexter Puny real quick.
Man, just to summarize him. So Poindexter Pointer Puny is the son of opera singers who is determined to be a professional wrestler and always wanted to be one. But he was blessed with infantile-sized hands. So he grows into this 6'4", like super muscular guy, but his hands remain the same size. So like all through high school wrestling, he just always loses because he can't grapple effectively because his hands are so small. But he's an absolute workhorse. And he's also got this Italian gimmick going as part of like the opera singer background. So he hails from Ragu, Italy. And prior to his match in our gameplay, like he's at the soup kitchen, he's all about helping people. And he comes out after the promo in his Italian skin tight Italian flag shirt with the Speedo. And there's this zone around the entrance that's the known splash zone where people have ponchos. And he also singles out a fan and gets their name. And he sings a specific aria about that fan's name while spraying homemade pasta sauce all over the splash zone.
Out of a massive super soaker.
Yeah, out of a massive super soaker. And he's a jobber, so he and again, because he really just can't grapple well. But he does everything else pretty well because he's worked his whole life to get the opportunity to make it. And just because of his sheer dedication, he made it. But again, he loses.
Yeah.
You told me his name was Poindexter Puny, and I expected a level of class and dignity from Poindexter Puny. No, I like to go that deep with some of the wrestlers. And indeed, some of my jobbers have like long backstories too. And I go, well, why do I do this? Like there is no need for me to fill brain space with these no-name characters who like a tag team I've got whose names are Best and the Losing. I don't know why, but they got long stories that I could tell. I won't, but yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know what our point is, what our bigger point is, but I can tell you that that doing this stuff is provided me with some of the greatest entertainment in my life, and it's free. It's free.
Yes.
Yeah. So two of the questions that we ask at the end of each game session to all of the players is, one, how did you relate to this character? And then how are you able to try something new? And I very strongly believe that through the creation of these characters and the role play experience, that we're just exploring the human condition. And to go deep into, as silly as like Poindexter Puny is, like I do sing, like I was part of several choirs, like there's a part of me that's part of this character.
Yeah, you belted out that aria, man.
Yeah, thank you. And so, on some level, as ridiculous as it gets, there's still a little part of you that is that character. And I think that I mean, maybe I'm just putting words in your mouth, but just writing all of these characters up, it's kind of just, it's so silly, but it's fun. And it's fun to think of humans in just these absurd ways, but still, they're still part of the world, and they're part of this federation, and to connect them to ourselves, I think is meaningful. And it's like, what would that look like if this outrageous concept was, a real person and had to exist?
I was young, so this is probably not a surprise, but I had a wrestler, and then later on changed to a different wrestler that was meant to be more or less my psyche. I was this wrestler. So I controlled all the wrestlers from a storyline standpoint, but there was one who was me, and I was very depressed, and it was this guy who was, I don't want to say emo, because emo didn't exist yet, but he was. That's kind of what he was. He was goth or whatever, and his name was Zero. I guess he was kind of grunge, maybe, because Zero was on every grunge shirt at the time. I don't know how old you guys were, but it was. And he carried around a snake. He wasn't meant to be like Jake the Snake at all. It just ended up, it was like his only friend. And I wasn't a guy who didn't have friends, but I was a guy who doubted the veracity of all his friendships, because that's what depression does to a person. And so Zero ended up being this guy. And then I intentionally made it so Zero was not somebody who could get to the top, because I wanted him to remain frustrated and real and kind of unsatisfied with how far he had gone. And gosh, I guess that goes deeper than I thought I was going to get into, but that was kind of the point of having Zero, and then having Zero not be a guy who shot up to the top of the card and danced with the other champions.
Yeah, no, I mean that's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
this is the process. This is like this.
Yeah.
Thank you for like having this very clear anecdote about like the things that we preach, because when you go back and you reflect on the character and you think about the meaning behind it. Like, you had fun, like you played a game, but on some level too, like with the role playing, because role playing is a huge part of the therapeutic experience. You act out like the different ways things could happen. You begin to act out healthier habits, or you act out the negative habits and then talk about why that happened. So yes, that was a great example.
No, 100%. So one of the things that, and I know we're kind of going a little bit long for us, but one of the things that we talked about with Zach Hadorn and Tom Staup, Tom being Kelly and I's our third co-host on PWT Talks NXT, but one of the things that we talked about with them was kind of therapy in wrestling, and what we think draws people into wrestling. But also, kind of why people seem to turn to it for a therapeutic outlet. Because, just about every wrestling fan I talk to says that they turn to it, to deal with whether it be depression or, a home situation or, something along those lines. We even have wrestlers that say, they began wrestling, or they latched onto wrestling and became a wrestler because they were depressed, and it kind of became their outlet. I kind of have a feeling you might have some insight into this, Kelly, and have at least a couple thoughts on this. So I want to throw to you and see what you got.
I'd be surprised if people didn't say the word escapism. I think that wrestling as escapism is it's a pretty clear reason for wrestling to exist, very much in the same way that action movies exist, or soap operas. Those two things put together, that's pro wrestling. So it's an unending story. So you know that it's going to be comfortable. So that's something that's really easy to get into, because your favorite drama is going to end at some point, almost certainly. But money willing, your favorite pro wrestling show will not end ever. So there's that. It's very comforting to have that kind of continuity. So that's part of it. And then also it's very visceral. Strong style wasn't as prevalent when we were young, and strong style, for those listening, is kind of it looks real because it is. Like they're really smacking the hell out of each other. I think people ask, like, how do they do fake blood in wrestling? And I go, they don't. It's real blood, and they really draw blood from each other, but they just know they're going to do it. It's not fake, quote unquote fake. It's just fixed. It's they know what they're doing. So it's but anyway, with the rise of strong style, which is a favorite style of mine, which is why I love New Japan Pro Wrestling, and that's a whole other ball of wax, but that style is what appeals to me most. It's very visceral and allows you to kind of, in the same way video games do, you blow off steam and you get rid of excess aggression by living through the aggression of others. For instance, my boy Hiroki Goto, whose music I entered to at the top of the show here, he works real stiff, and I just love the guy. So it's I don't have anything to say necessarily about it that you wouldn't hear from 100 other wrestling fans, but I think that it's a really good thing that it's been there for me. And granted, if it wasn't, something else would be. But for those of us who do regularly fight depression, anything that kind of centers you, anything that's always there, that's what you need, and that's what wrestling's been for me.
You know, it's kind of weird you brought. Well, I wouldn't say weird you brought that up, because I think that actually might be relatively kind of on the surface. Like, a lot of people might end up, like you said, 100 wrestling fans probably would have said the same thing. But it's like, the one thing you said there that I didn't think of, that I think is a big reason that I latched on to wrestling in the way I did, is kind of that continuity and having that peace of mind that this world is kind of there, because it's like, you think about it, and now he's not necessarily a wrestler that I'm super enamored with, but this is an example that I can think of off the top of my head. But Randy Orton debuted in 2002, 2002, I think. And he's going to be in a main event level match, just in a few weeks. There's other people like The Undertaker. You've got all these wrestlers that have kind of stood the test of time, and we kind of still see on a regular basis. And even not necessarily wrestlers that you see on a regular basis, but like they still exist in the world. You might have a new up and comer that's trying to dethrone a record or something like that. But like the references to The Undertaker still get brought up, or references to Stone Cold or The Rock or whoever.
Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, Ronda Rousey. So I think that's a big thing, and that's something that none of us have brought up yet in any of these series of Worldwide Wrestling RPG podcasts that we've done so far. Is that kind of we brought up continuity, but continuity being kind of that safety blanket that you can come back to on a regular basis. Actually, I guess one of us did kind of bring it up to a very, very slight point. In the first episode of the Worldwide Wrestling RPG podcast we did, with Zach and Tom, I mentioned that I was there the night that Mick Foley won his very first world title, and it was actually a major, major historic night in wrestling, period. Like, I had no idea I was in the building for one of the biggest nights in modern wrestling history, because that is the last night that WCW won in the ratings. Actually, I don't think they won that night. They didn't win that night. So it was the week before.
They gave away that
right
on They announced, because they were jerks, that Mick Foley was going to win the championship in the main event, and said, "Oh, that'll put butts in the seats."
Right.
And millions of people changed the channel to see it, and WCW never won another week.
Yep. So monumental night. And yes, I just kind of happened to mention I was there, and we were talking about big crowd reactions. That's right. We were talking about big crowd reactions. I'm like, that's the biggest one I've ever seen or ever been, witness to in, live. And Zach said, he goes, "Wow." He goes, "To this day, I still go back and watch that crowd pop when I need to feel good." So, I think that's a big thing, is that continuity and just that, you grow with these characters. Somebody like Mick Foley, he's not wrestling anymore. He hasn't really wrestled regularly since 2000. But he's still involved in wrestling. He shows up and rears his head from time to time. It's just somebody that'll keep showing up. You get these faces that you see all the time, names you see all the time, and obviously faces come and go, and people fall out of favor with the company, and then they disappear. You never hear their name again, or things like that. But still, for the most part, it's just a big, it kind of is just a comfortable place to go back to. I like that. I hadn't really thought about. I guess I have thought about it, but not necessarily kind of really thought about it. So I appreciate you bringing it up.
I think you got to know it on some level, but I don't know if how conscious that thought was until I heard myself saying it, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's what it is."
No, definitely. And as you were saying it, I'm going, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm the type of guy that, I couldn't tell you how many times I've watched The Office, because it's a comfort show. Like, I know what's going to happen. I can have it on in the background. I know what's going on. It doesn't matter what episode it is. I might not have been paying attention for the last 3 episodes, just on in the background. But then if I look at the TV, oh, hey, I know that, this is the episode that Michael Scott drives his car into the lake because he's following the GPS, or whatever, so yeah, wrestling is always that thing that I can kind of go back to. And it's a world I understand. It's characters I understand. It's stories I understand. And I've been following for years, And actually, that it's funny. Earlier today, off air, Kelly and I were talking about New Japan a little bit, and New Japan's a company that, like, I'll watch here and there, but it's like I don't keep up with regularly. And Kelly is somebody that's telling me to keep up with it. Ben, who plays the Mind Creep, and he was on the podcast a few weeks ago, he's been telling me to keep up with it for years and years and years and years at this point.
Yeah, whenever Ben wants to show me like fun wrestling clips he'll know I'll like, it's always from New Japan.
Yeah, and every time I watch New Japan, like I love the presentation, I love what I see and all that. But like I now that we're talking about that, continuity, that safety blanket and all that stuff, it's kind of like I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about New Japan, and it's almost like a I guess in a way, almost kind of like me looking at like Dungeons and Dragons. I was looking at, and part of the reason we're even sitting here doing this podcast, because I would look at a stack of Dungeons and Dragons books and go, oh, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot I got to look at. So I'm wondering if maybe that might even be why I don't look at New Japan, because
New Japan does a lot of shows. You can be right on top of it within a couple of weeks.
All right.
They do like 200 shows a year.
So yeah, okay. It looks like New Japan World is on my horizon, or maybe I still have Ben's login cached in my computer. Maybe.
There you go.
All right, guys, that brings us to the end of the show for tonight. Kelly, I want to say thank you again for taking the time out tonight to sitting down talking to us about wrestling, your dice wrestling. Really interesting to actually kind of dive into that and hear about all of that. It was really cool. But please go ahead. Let us know where we can follow you on social media. Tell us a little bit about any of the games that you've come up with. This is promote yourself. Do your thing.
I will do that thing. You can find me all over social media at Spooky Milk or at Spooky Milk Games on Instagram, which is where I post mostly my daughters and I playing board games, and my brother and my wife. I also am a board game designer. I've got 2 under my belt so far. I had a minor success with this last one. It's called Fun Dead, the Gravest Show on Earth, and did pretty well with it. It's about zombies versus circus folk, and you got to see who wins that battle. It is a one-on-one strategic card placement battle, and it can be played fairly quickly. You can find that on SpookyMilkGames.com. And I like it. My daughters bring it to me, and they want to play it, not because I created it, but because they really, really like it. And I'm working on a couple of different games right now. One where old women are trying to beat each other in a very cutthroat, violent, local state fair ornamental garden competition, and then one where it's called Ornamental Disorder, and then one where cats are deciding where to sit in as far as which clique they want to sit with at the school lunch table, and it's called Cool Cats. So those are that's what I'm working on right now. I have not said either of those things, so there you go. That's the first time I've shared what I'm working on right now.
That's probably why I didn't know about that first one with the old women. That is intriguing. That's intriguing. I like that.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of work if it's gonna come out the way that I want it to, but it's gonna have like elderly women looking all sexy on the cards. It's gonna be hilarious. Yeah, and then like elderly women also playing bouncers, like to protect their ornamental gardens from unforeseen fires, which may or may not be set by the other players.
God, dude, that sounds fantastic. Man, to be in your brain, man, to be in your brain.
It's a lot of work to be in my brain, but sometimes it pays off.
All right. So yeah, Kelly, definitely. Thank you for coming and being here with us tonight. Conrad, go ahead and say goodnight.
Bye, everyone.
And Tony, you can talk if you want.
I can talk if I want to.
Yeah.
Can I leave my friends behind?
Well, only if your friends can't talk.
And if they can't talk, then they're no friends of mine.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That checks out.
And with that completely awful, horrible joke, which I still kind of chuckled at because, hey, that's the stuff I like, that brings us to the conclusion of this episode of the Degecast. Guys, we will talk to you next week. We've got the creator of the Worldwide Wrestling RPG. We talked with Nathan Paoletta a few weeks ago, and we will be bringing you guys that interview right here next week. We'll see you then.